Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Mm.
Today, we're plunging into a topic that, well, it feels like science fiction, but it's a very real threat. Deepfakes.
Mm-hmm.
More specifically, we're doing a deep dive into the, frankly, terrifying reality of voice cloning scams.
Yeah.
Could your own voice, the very sound of your identity, be turned against you? That's the question we're exploring today, and maybe more importantly, how you can protect yourself.
Indeed. And it's really moved beyond just those fake videos of celebrities. What the research really emphasizes is how deepfakes now encompass images, videos, and especially audio,
Right.
all leveraging these incredibly powerful AI tools. So our mission today is to extract the most critical insights from the material we've gathered, really help you navigate the severe and, frankly, often overlooked threat.
Okay, so we've pulled insights from quite a range of sources. There's a detailed report on cybersecurity and darker objectives, various articles too, from places like indiatimes.com, npr.org, Bitdefender, the FTC,
Yeah.
quite a few.
And what's truly fascinating, or maybe alarming, is just how quickly this technology has evolved.
Yeah.
And how profoundly it's blurring the lines between, fact and fiction. Makes it incredibly difficult to trust what we hear sometimes.
So to really grasp the chilling gravity of these voice cloning scams, let's start with a scenario. This is painted in some of the source material.
Okay.
Imagine this. You're fast asleep, right? Your phone rings.
Mm-hmm.
It's your daughter's number showing up.
Mm-hmm.
You pick up, and her voice, it sounds exactly like her, filled with panic, desperation. She's pleading for help. Your protective instincts they kick in immediately. Your heart's racing.
And that scenario, it really highlights the insidious core of this threat, doesn't it?
It does.
Because what the victim in this case didn't know was that the scammers had already thought through every protective instinct. They tried calling their daughter back, naturally, but her phone went straight to voicemail. Driving over to check wasn't an option. Calling friends, family for help. No, because the scammer had subtly threatened danger if the police were contacted.
Wow.
Creating this intense, isolated panic.
That chilling setup.
Oh.
It really brings home the human element, the fear. But let's zoom out a bit. How does this specific scam, its success, connect to the broader sophistication we're seeing?
Right.
Because in that scenario, the victim was asked for a very specific, large amount of money, say $200,000.
Yeah.
Delivered in a particular way, strict time frame, told not to tell anyone, and overwhelmed by shock, panic, they caved. Only later finding out their daughter was fine. Her phone was just slipped under the door at a laundromat. The whole thing, a scam.
And according to the analysis, the success of that particular scam, it really stemmed from meticulous planning. It wasn't random.
Meticulous how?
Well, the scammers had apparently observed the daughter's daily routine for weeks. Weeks. Establishing patterns, recording little snippets of her voice without her knowing.
Just out in public.
Could be, yeah. Or online. Then they strategically picked a student, far from home, no local friends or family, specifically targeting a parent who didn't have existing law enforcement contacts and, crucially, had enough liquid assets.
Like the $200 K.
Exactly. Something like $200,000 from online trading, easily convertible to crypto. The timing, late at night, chosen to induce instant panic, urgency.
Right. Catch you off guard.
Totally. And they'd even studied her manner of speaking under stress from those recordings, inflections, unique words. And the final touch, they called from her actual phone.
Her actual phone. How?
Stolen briefly, presumably, and then returned it to a place she frequented, like the laundromat, to deter any quick police investigation. Makes it look like she just lost it.
So it's almost like a full intelligence operation just to get that voice sample and set the stage.
Pretty much.
That's what makes these so hard to trace later. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Who are these high-value targets the reports mention?
Precisely. Yeah, they're typically individuals, businesses, handling significant financial transactions or holding valuable assets. Now, while such high ransom cases are, thankfully, still relatively rare, the concerning part is that the same sophisticated methodology, it's frequently adapted, scaled down for more common, automated, lower ransom scams.
So this deep dive is really about understanding the enemy here, because many of us, I think, still picture deepfakes as just, fake videos.
Right, the celebrity face swaps.
Exactly. But the real stealth threat, as the research emphasizes, seems to lie in audio.
Definitely.
Imagine a technology so potent it can weaponize the most trusted sound, a loved one's voice. That's the chilling insight we're diving into, how AI is turning trust itself into a vulnerability, making synthetic audio the ultimate Trojan horse.
It allows for a frighteningly realistic swapping of a person's likeness, face, voice, the whole package. And this tech, it's gained notoriety for its dark side, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Creating things like child sexual abuse material, revenge porn, generating convincing fake news, hoaxes, bullying, sophisticated financial fraud. They're becoming terrifyingly convincing.
Okay, so how do these speech deepfakes actually work? And what makes them so much more dangerous than, say, older phone scams?
Well, the sources draw a really clear distinction here. Old fake voice scams, one source actually likens them to a firecracker.
Firecracker, okay.
Yeah, meaning, noticeable but maybe limited impact compared to now. It involved meticulously stitching together segments of recorded audio.
Right, I remember hearing about that.
And it was incredibly difficult. They had to manually adjust tone, volume, remove background noise,
Yeah.
and the hardest part, mimic voice inflection, how emotion and meaning are conveyed.
Took weeks, probably.
Exactly. Weeks and real-time responses. Impossible. That method's pretty much obsolete now.
So what's the new method?
Voice cloning. The same source calls this one a nuke.
Whoa. Okay, big difference.
Huge difference. This is AI-powered. Scammers need only a few seconds. Get this. As little as 5 seconds of a person's voice to impersonate them.
5 seconds.
5 seconds. The longer the recording, sure, the more accurate the result, but 5 seconds can be enough to start.
It's almost no time at all.
And these AI tools, they're plentiful. Many are open source, incredibly easy to use. Even if the original recording is totally neutral, scammers can alter the tone, pitch, inflection, just
With a click.
pretty much a press of a button. And more critically, they can generate entirely new words not even present in the original recording.
Wow. Does that mean any brief phone call, any social media video clip could be enough to compromise someone's voice?
Potentially, yes. That's the risk.
And that real-time response capability you mentioned,
Yeah,
that sounds like a complete game changer. It makes these scams so much harder to spot, doesn't it?
it absolutely does. They can respond to your questions in real time, either by typing text responses, which get converted instantly into the cloned voice, or even by converting their own voice into the cloned voice on the fly.
So they could just talk normally, and it comes out sounding like my daughter.
Essentially, yes. And scammers, the serious ones, they take this very seriously, often combining sophisticated software with specialized hardware, things like modulators, synthesizers.
What do those do?
They're basically sound-shaping devices that fine-tune the cloned voice, make it even more indistinguishable, more reliable than software alone, which can sometimes, glitch or fail.
Okay, let's unpack the general anatomy then. What's the playbook for these scams, according to the research?
It typically involves 4 main steps. First is voice gathering.
Right, getting the sample.
Exactly. Scammers collect voice samples from all sorts of places, social media videos, often through data breaches or just scraping public content, public speeches, even potentially intercepted phone calls from, say, compromised call centers.
Scary. Good. Step 2.
Second is AI training. Those voice samples are fed into AI algorithms.
Right.
The AI learns the target's voice patterns, their intonation, specific speech characteristics, building these detailed models like databases of the voice.
Got it.
Third, voice cloning. Once the AI is trained, it can generate new, realistic audio that sounds exactly like the target, even saying completely new phrases it's never heard before.
And the final step.
Step 4, the scam. The cloned voice is then deployed for all sorts of fraudulent activities. Phishing, obviously, but voice cloning adds this insidious new layer.
How so?
Well, imagine a call where it sounds exactly like your bank rep asking for account details. It transforms a known threat into something almost undetectable.
Yeah, that's much harder to dismiss.
Right. They also use it for social engineering, impersonating the victim themselves to manipulate, say, a colleague into transferring funds or revealing sensitive info, or for placing fraudulent orders over the phone. And a big one is business impersonation.
Like the CEO scam.
Exactly. Mimicking a high-ranking executive's voice to authorize fraudulent wire transfers. Big money there.
So beyond the immediate, financial threat, there's a deeper ripple here, isn't there? The research talks a lot about the ethical implications, this broader erosion of trust.
Absolutely. This technology, it really is a double-edged sword. On one hand, there are incredible positive uses.
Like what?
Like restoring a voice for someone who's lost it due to illness, which is amazing, or allowing smaller companies maybe to use a public figure's clone voice for marketing with consent, of course, at a fraction of the usual cost.
Okay, that sounds almost miraculous for someone who's lost their voice. So Where does the positive application end and the ethical minefield begin? What's the core problem?
The core ethical concern really is the lack of consent. When a voice is cloned without permission, that leads directly to privacy violations, identity theft. We've seen it with celebrities, politicians whose voices get cloned without their knowledge.
Right.
And because these replicas are so convincing, people receiving the calls find it incredibly difficult to tell real from synthetic, which naturally greatly increases the risk of falling for scams.
That makes you wonder, doesn't it? Are we prepared for this on a regulatory level? Are the laws keeping up?
Reports indicate, not really. Regulations are unfortunately lagging behind the tech.
That seems common with new tech.
It does. While you see efforts underway, big tech giants like Facebook, Microsoft, Twitter, trying to detect deepfakes, and there's an emphasis on public education. Existing laws are struggling. The FTC is addressing it in the US. GDPR offers a framework in Europe. But some regions, like South Africa, apparently lack specific AI laws entirely.
So it's patchy.
Very patchy. Ultimately, it boils down to a critical need for robust regulation, new laws, better oversight.
And it's that very erosion of trust that feels like the most insidious threat, maybe even more than the money.
I think so.
Beyond the financial loss, what are the societal ripple effects when we can't even trust the voices we hear anymore?
Absolutely. The ability to create these hyper-realistic audio deepfakes, it fundamentally erodes public trust. Bad actors can publish fake statements, supposedly from public figures.
Spreading misinformation.
Exactly. Leading to misinformation, confusion, a complete loss of faith in legitimate statements sometimes, and in elections. Deepfakes are seen as a serious threat, spreading false narratives, trying to influence voter behavior, undermining democratic institutions.
Yeah, I could see that.
There's actually a particularly chilling detail from the analysis quoting the Eurasia Group. They call these AI tools weapons of mass disruption.
Wow.
Warning, they will erode social trust, empower demagogues and authoritarians, and disrupt businesses and markets. And they add, advances in deepfakes, facial recognition, and voice synthesis software will render control over one's likeness a relic of the past.
A relic of the past. That sentiment truly highlights how big of a crisis this is becoming. Especially when, as the analysis states, regulations are lacking, oversight is negligent, and these voice cloning scams are actually outmatching the verification software.
There's a funding imbalance often.
Right. And it makes it incredibly difficult, potentially, for even an innocent person to prove their innocence if their voice was cloned and used in a crime. How do you prove it wasn't you?
That's a terrifying thought. And these scams, they're becoming increasingly sophisticated, more prevalent. Beyond that chilling family emergency scenario we started with, the research reveals a shocking breadth of scam types. At least 15 common ones listed.
15? Like what?
Well, business imposter scams your CEO's cloned voice demanding an urgent wire transfer. Basically, a blueprint for a corporate heist.
Okay.
Or consider political scams. A deep-faked President Joe Biden soliciting donations, for example, which isn't just about money, it's about eroding democratic trust itself.
Undermining the process.
Exactly. Then there are things like help desk scams, posing as customer service reps to trick you into divulging sensitive details. Banking scams, cloning bank reps, social media scams, using voice samples scraped from your profile to scam your contacts.
A long list.
It is. Tech support scams, job offer scams, lottery scams, rental scams, insurance, medical, legal, charity, even government scams. Honestly, it's like a terrifying bingo card of deception.
Okay, it's vital then to recognize that these scams are adapting constantly. So, the big question, what are the key warning signs? What should you be listening for?
The sources provide several critical indicators. First, listen carefully for an inconsistent tone or pitch.
What does that sound like?
You might notice sudden changes in depth or inflection that just don't quite match the person you know. Or maybe the voice sounds oddly robotic, lacking its usual warmth or emotion, even if the words are right.
Okay, inconsistent tone. What else?
Second, be aware of unfamiliar phrasing. Pay attention if the person uses words or phrases they would normally use. Like maybe a close friend suddenly uses overly formal or awkward language when asking for money. That's a flag.
Right, add a character.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Third, there's often a subtle mechanical quality. Listen for a slight metallic distortion, sometimes more noticeable during emotional moments or rapid speech. Or maybe an unnatural echo, or if it just lacks that smooth, human-like flow of normal conversation.
Like it's slightly off.
Precisely. Fourth, pay attention to odd pauses. You might hear unnatural gaps or hesitations, especially in response to specific questions, breaking that usual back and forth rhythm.
Like the AI's thinking.
Could be, or just imperfections in the generation.
Hmm.
Fifth, consider a mismatch between content and context. Question urgent requests that just don't align with how that person would normally communicate, like a coworker suddenly asking for sensitive financial info they never ask for.
Trust your gut feeling too, maybe.
Definitely. And finally, beware of caller ID spoofing. Just because a familiar name or number pops up doesn't guarantee it's them.
Right, that tech has been around.
It has. So be skeptical if something about the voice or the mannerisms feels off, even if the caller ID looks legitimate.
Okay, so recognizing the signs is step one. But knowing how to actually stop these scams is crucial. The material provides what it calls a solid plan, right? Practical steps.
Yes, and this raises the key question. What's the most effective defense? The first, and honestly incredibly effective strategy, is the callback check.
Callback check, how does that work?
Simply say, hey, something's noisy here, let me call you right back. Or any excuse. Then, crucially, hang up and call them back on their known, trusted number from your contacts list, not a number they give you.
The number you already have saved.
Exactly. If they pressure you not to hang up or insist you call a different number they provide, that's a massive red flag. Proceed with extreme caution.
Okay, what else?
Next, establish a verification system. This is highly effective. Create a unique password, a silly phrase, a secret code word, something known only to you and your trusted inner circle.
Like a family safe word?
Precisely. A scammer using a cloned voice won't know it. It instantly confirms identity. Combining this with good software protection, that's a strong defense.
Makes sense.
Also, always pause and verify. Before taking any urgent action, especially involving money or sensitive info, just stop, pause. Double check. Call the person back on that trusted number. Ask specific questions only the real person would know the answer to. Pausing gives you that critical moment to spot inconsistencies.
Fight the panic urge.
Exactly. Then there's limit what you share online. Do an audit of your social media. How much personal information is out there? Remove things like exact vacation dates, maybe your exact birthday, detailed family connections. Scammers weaponize this public data to craft convincing stories.
Good point. Less ammo for them.
Right. And recognize common red flags. We talked about them: urgency, emotional manipulation, unsolicited financial requests. These are tactics designed to make you act impulsively. Be wary.
Okay, what about tech solutions?
Definitely use call screening and blocking, enable those features on your phone, or use third-party apps to filter suspicious calls. Avoid answering unrecognized numbers if possible. Let it go to voicemail. You can also leverage technology specifically designed for this anti-spoofing apps, tools that detect suspicious calls. One source specifically recommended Truecaller, noting its AI-cloned voice detection capabilities.
Okay, Truecaller. Good tip.
And finally, maybe the most powerful tool: educate your inner circle. Share this knowledge. Talk to your family, friends, coworkers. Awareness really is the strongest defense against these kinds of scams.
We've certainly uncovered a lot of layers to this threat today. From the chilling mechanics to its wider societal tremors. You listening should now have a much clearer understanding of what voice cloning is, why it's such a significant threat.
Yeah.
And the anatomy of these scams, from the voice gathering, the AI training, to how they actually execute these frauds.
And we also touched on the ethical implications, didn't we? Especially around consent and that worrying erosion of trust and the current sort of lagging state of regulation. You've heard about the many types of scams out there now, and crucially, learn those key warning signs to listen for and that solid plan of mitigation strategies.
And remember, these AI-powered scams are just vastly more effective than ordinary scams. That's the takeaway. While they're not yet universally adopted by all scammers, there are still some technical barriers, maybe cost.
For now.
For now. But this is changing rapidly. As material warns, it really feels like only a matter of time before you or someone you know could be targeted. We saw it in that $35 million corporate heist example mentioned in the sources.
Yeah, these voice cloning tools, they're becoming almost a dime a dozen, as one source put it, with very little oversight. The advice we've discussed today can't guarantee you won't become a victim. Nobody can promise that, but it absolutely offers the best possible protection against this really rapidly evolving threat.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? In a world where these AI tools are effectively turning our own trust against us, and where proving your voice wasn't used in a crime could become incredibly difficult, how will society adapt? How do we adapt to a future where, as that quote suggested, control over our own likeness, our own voice, might become a relic of the past? Something to think about until our next deep dive.